Welcome to the SE Journey, where we take you on journeys from across the spectrum on just how the hell we became systems engineers. My name's Zane Allen, and he's Chris Sprague. I said that backwards. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the SE Journey. My name's Chris Sprague, and with me, as always, my host, co-host, Zane Allen. How you doing over there, Zane?
Great, Chris. Excited to be back here in a little more timely schedule, so that's going to be awesome, and very excited to talk to our guest today.
Yeah, we've got Emilee with us. I was going to say, before I pass it over to you, Emilee, to Zane's point, excited that we got you on the schedule, and we might actually get this one out in time. We've shot for like a month by month release for 3 years and never done it. So glad you could join us.
And even with the difficulties in our schedule, this may be the one.
It still works. Yeah,
that's crazy. Yeah. So.
Definitely. So Emilee, please introduce yourself. I'm curious if your background is real or if that's a virtual background. Looks like you're in some exciting place there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So hello, my name's Emilee Tejas. I am a technologist for Veeam Software. So I'm on the Office of the CTO/product strategy side. But previously, I was a Veeam SE. And no, the background is not fake. I am sitting in our Columbus, Ohio headquarters right now, recording some new content for our YouTube and website and pretty much any other media series that you can get involved in. So awesome. Everything but a podcast, but now I'm recording this podcast.
Everything but a podcast? But in the middle of it, time for a podcast. Yeah, very, very exciting. And I should note, I've known Emilee. Well, Chris has too. I've known Emilee for a long time. I would say I won't say you started our Veeam journey together. We definitely started our SE journey at the same time. So this is pretty special podcast for me, right? Having started in the Veeam office basically the same day, or maybe you were a week before me or whatever. But excited to unwrap that journey for this podcast. So we really appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
fitness in.
That's amazing. I haven't been there as long as your two friendships, but I can remember my first introduction to Emilee as well was a new hire at Veeam, and we were told like the amazing SE that does the best demos in the world is going to come show you guys how to do it, and here comes in Emilee and just blows it out of the water with the best Veeam demo you've seen. So
I think I remember that.
So there's. Just because you wouldn't shut up.
All I did the entire time was just make jokes. And I don't think anybody paid attention to the content. They were more interested in the stories that I was telling, which works.
That's a good tip right there, right? Read the room, figure out what people are really going to pay attention to, right? No lectures, just
stories are always good.
Yeah. So I've had the pleasure of working with Zane, you and I being peers on the same team, and then Chris, you and I being peers from a partner engineer and SE in the West. So got to work together a lot, which is fun.
Yeah, Emilee and myself, there was two other guys. One of them still there, Mr. Bailey. Maybe doesn't want me to mention his name, but I did. Got to get him on the podcast. Yeah. We all sat in 4 cubicles and had headphones on and just yelled really loud over the...
We yelled over each other.
And then
we're on calls.
Over each other.
That was always great.
Try to change the script that somebody else was saying. And then if you were off a call, you just started lobbing stuff over the cubicle. Yeah. Software environments are fun. They can be fun. But
especially when the customer can hear the other guy on the other side. They're like, why does it sound like there's an echo in the background? Like, you guys are almost saying the exact same thing, but you're obviously a female voice, and that's a male voice. Very similar.
Oh, really?
What's going on?
Very confused.
Yeah.
Robots.
But best story of that, though, was our boss at the time, who's out of Atlanta. His story was he would talk so loud that somebody on another call did what he asked his person to do. So, like, it was like, hey, I need you to touch that. The person's like, what? He's like, no, not you. Like, that's... Yeah, Mr. Ackard.
That's a different call.
So I tried to emulate Ackard. Yeah. He was just like, because he would just stand up and just direct his voice. He would try to see how far you could throw it across the room. You know, you gotta have fun with it.
So you're the reason that when I was on a call with the customer, they deleted their Exchange database because they heard you from over the cube.
I'm gonna need you to delete that
to someone else, and they were like, "Oh, let's just do it then."
You're like this? No, not like that. What are you doing?
No. Yeah.
Let's hope this backup works.
You've been running those backups, right?
Yeah.
Now that you click that button.
POC call. The one and only time that I was like, "Ooh, all right, it's going to be a very interesting day."
We're gonna see if this works.
Like, I don't know why you would just do that without actually checking, but okay.
Here's where theory becomes application real quick. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. That's funny.
I've been on that. I was on a call. I don't know. We've gotten way into this so far. I was on a call once where they were like, "Hey, we want to get this back," and then somebody finally chimed in. He goes, "No, I deleted those backups," and I was like, "I can't help you," because he just started. He's like, "Well, we ran out of space, so I deleted some of the backups, which were like the D drive of the Exchange." I was like, "Well, guess what, buddy?" Anyway,
That's funny.
that's not what we're here to talk about.
Well,
We've totally
it's part of
derailed
the
here.
SE journey, though.
But it is.
It
It's
is.
part of our journey.
Well, it's part of all the journey. I was going to say, yeah, a little off topic here, but I was going to take it to now everybody wants to work from home, and you will never have any of these experiences if we just sit at home all the time.
Yeah.
That camaraderie in the office, those ad hoc talks and meetings and
The
drive-bys, as we used to call them. And,
Yeah.
All the sales reps would just listen to us and try to pick up on it. Yep.
And then we could play bingo with the amount of different buzzwords that we would hear.
Yeah. That's always a good one.
So.
Or you'd ask the guy, "Hey, we're all going to list your prezzo. I need you to slip these words in." Drew was really good at that. So, yeah. Well, all the things you can do. Just hone your skill.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. You don't get that anymore. Got to do it on webinars, and it's a little harder.
yeah.
Making comments through Slack.
Yeah, so that's...
But yeah.
yeah, no.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say we should have Emilee walk us through. We know about that part, but we should probably walk through kind of how you got there, because I think your story, especially who we've talked to, is very different. At least your origins, kind of how you got even to SE, and especially where you are now, right? You do the best demos, I guess. Do the class, you get to do YouTube content for the Office of CTO. So I guess that's the lesson there. But yeah, why don't you?
That's true.
Hone your craft and
let
you
you
can
walk
be an
us through it.
influencer.
There it is.
No, that's not what I want. So, where do we begin? Yeah.
You always wanted to be in
your
technology.
point,
You always wanted to be
when
an
I was
SE,
born,
right?
I told my parents that I wanted to be a sales engineer, and that's just what I wanted to do for as long as I can remember.
She was determined.
I was determined to make it happen. Yeah. No, I think for a lot of people, right, and to that point, nobody is just born and says that is a job or something that I want to go into. You discover it or you fall into it. And I was very much so the person that fell into technology. Because for the longest time, I wanted to be a sports agent. And that was my goal. That was what I was focused on in life. That is what I went to college for. I was just going to be a great agent that would represent all these athletes and make millions of dollars.
You wanted to represent Jerry Maguire.
Yes. I wanted to be Jerry Maguire.
Just wanted to show
Or,
them
yeah,
what-
that's what I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Exactly. Until I realized when I was in my classes that everybody that took those classes are athletes that potentially got hurt, that no longer play. So they were thinking, well, I can't play the sport, so might as well still make money in the sport and you're like,
but already
all right, so
already in it, already have the connections, already, You're like, oh, this is going to be harder.
This makes it a little bit harder than you would think, right?
What
Yes.
degree is that, Emilee?
There's actually one for sports law. So
sports
you get,
law. Okay.
you get, yeah.
It's out of Arizona,
Well,
right? Or I don't know if you want me to.
You
tell
get
people.
you could get different ones. I know USC had one specifically for it, and then Arizona State. It's like a mixture of your bachelor degree. So like I went to WB Carey School of Business, but then I also did Walter Cronkite. So I have a pseudo communications degree, but then also a business degree, and they're kind of merged together in this little mixture.
Yeah. suppose it's trying to give it a focus, a business degree
Yeah,
with a focus.
yeah. So, that was what I was gonna do, and I stayed in that major for a pretty long time. Actually, that's what I graduated with, right? But I dabbled in other things here and there. I did supply chain, and then I looked into, being a visualist for different large brand name companies and stores and pretty much everything,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. As
Yeah,
one does most of the time in
'cause,
college, yeah. Maybe not everybody,
Sports
but most of
agents
us.
started high, and then it just started trickling down the list, and then I was like, you know what? I really just kind of need a job, so
Some point I
at
actually
some
have to work.
point,
Yeah.
you can't just continue to go to school, and then if something eventually happens, right? But I worked all through my college, so it wasn't. I worked 40 hours a week when I was in college, so I kind of had a lot of different experiences with different type of vendors and cells and things like that. So I kind of knew, okay, I know I can do something. I just need to figure out what. And when I graduated, I still didn't know what that was, like most college students that graduate with a 4-year degree, and they're just like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
So, I went to career fairs, and I found one called, I talked to a representative from a company called CDW, and that's where I ended up. So I was on the reseller side before
Okay.
I actually came to Beam. So my first job out of college was working for CDW, which I'm sure everybody that's probably listening on these podcasts probably knows who they are. They're
Pretty big tech company just to fall
pretty
into.
good. Yeah. And that was fantastic for me, right? Because I was already in business. I was already in communications, and I came from a background of sales from my job that I had when I was in college. And I was already pretty nerdy. I was, to this point, I was playing video games. And like most people, that when the MacBook was everything that everybody wanted, but then everything nobody wanted when it came to actually playing video games on it. You learn how to dual boot your hard drive, so that way you can actually run games on it from a Windows perspective. So that's where kind of the technical piece started to come in, was like,
That's where it started clicking for you.
How do things work?
Yeah.
And
Mostly because I wanted to
having
run,
to maybe go out on the internet and read things, and
just because I wanted to play video games. It's like, how do I make this work?
Yeah.
So that's where that initially started, and where kind of my interest in tech began to grow. Started at CDW, and I was a sales rep that focused on small, medium-sized businesses in California.
It's cool. I like the MacBook. The example. Zane's already laughing at me because he knows where my brain goes. So, but what I was going to say is funny for Apple. Most people's journey with Apple is, we're going to make this so simple. You don't have to know tech or know anything. You had almost the exact opposite. Like, thanks, Apple, all your stuff's proprietary. Now I got to go figure out some techie so I can play some video games, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting. Completely opposite of what Apple would try to do. Right?
Apple was one of my ways into IT, because I was in the newspaper field and I did graphics, but I had to fix them because AT hated Macs. So I figured out how to make them come back to life when they didn't
The
work.
little MacBook.
And so when they interviewed me, they're like, yeah, you can come in and you can handle all those Macs because we don't like them. And so it was it was kind of my way
That's
into
exactly
IT.
what
So
that is.
but I go way back, like Apple 7, Apple Talk Network.
Hey,
stuff
Apple's
like.
great. I'm still an Apple user today, right?
It brought us here.
I use it,
Sure.
but
yeah, I paid these people a lot of money.
Back then when I wanted to play, so the only reason why I did it was, so there was this video game called Borderlands that I loved. Borderlands 2 rolled out. I wasn't going to miss out on playing it. And we had a whole party or a group of people that we were all set to play. And I'm like, the only computer that I have is my MacBook. and I don't have, extra cash on me to go and build a really cool gaming PC or, anything like that.
Right.
So I got to make what I have work.
Right. We're a sports agent yet.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. That didn't work out. I don't have the money that I thought I would. I got to make this this laptop work best for me. So that's kind of where that piece
There you go.
ended up. So
Solving problems.
solving
That's
problems.
cool.
That's awesome.
But yeah, CDW was great. I mean, I was there for almost close to 2 years, or a little over a year and a half. I could tell you that you learn a lot, right? I mean, their training program is excellent, especially when you first get there. It's not like they just throw you a phone book and say, all right, start dialing until you get somebody that says we want to buy, right? Yeah.
Strangling.
Yeah. No, they put you through a pretty extensive training program. And I mean, that helped a lot, right?
Nice.
To kind of understand more about, customers' data center, especially when, here I am, never came from it. I didn't work in it. So, this is going to be, training that I need to really kind of understand what types of problems customers have and, what solutions they're looking at and how I can be better prepared to sell those solutions.
Yeah.
And it was cool. It was
So that makes me do more research, and you got to tie the solving problems, solving solutions. Yeah. So which is a great skill. You can know all the tech in the world, but if you don't know how to do that for a bunch of different customers, it's kind of hard to be good in this role. In the role as SE, right? So kind of leading to that.
And so that was fantastic training, right? Because like I said, CDW, and I feel for any partners and resellers that are out there, because I know I did it. There's everything's changing all the time. You got vendor row where vendors are walking down, they're telling you about the new stuff, and it's how do you continue to remember all of this information to be able to sell to your book of business, which has maybe 300 customers on it, which is what I had at the time, but they're not all buying, but you still have to call into them, right? So there's just so much stuff that goes into it, and into that background that you're just oh, man, I feel for the resellers, because
then you got to manage. You got to manage that relationship.
Yeah, it's
all
tough.
those relationships, kind of, right?
It's tough. I was very happy to come over to the Veeam side and be I got one product. There's one company. I only need to know your pricing. And when it changes, I only have to focus on yours changing. I don't have to focus on 300 us plus different other, companies out there that their pricing and their situations change.
And then when you eventually become an SE, you can say, I don't know pricing.
Yeah,
you
that
actually have
that
out
was
if you
the
want.
best
But
part.
yeah.
It's I don't know. It costs
I know
what
you
it
didn't come
costs.
right to Veeam as an SE, but I don't know. It's free, I think. I don't know. Download it.
The minute though that you said it's free, I think your sales rep immediately muted you on the phone.
Yeah.
You're just what'd they say?
Oh, say there to go.
Say you must be having issues. Wi-Fi's not
Call
getting
the
up
sales
again.
rep.
I don't know. It's free. It's free for me. I don't know.
I was gonna say to your point about now you get to focus on one product. You really get to kind of hone your skill around that product, and we've been talking. That's what you're doing today. You're in there recording videos, and which is really nice for some of us, right? I was gonna say on the other side, for anyone out there new, trying to learn new technologies, or even if you are in IT and looking to come over to be an SE, and you really a lot of us are hungry. We like learning lots of new things, and you want to learn all the tech out there. Those resellers are a great place to go, right? Like someone big like that, like where you were, Emilee, because you do not only do you get training, well, they support you and pay for training. You have those vendors coming in and showing you the products and help, like you said, helped you understand the data center, and you could learn all sorts of technology. So if you're really hungry for things like that, that might be a path for you, right? You really want to focus. You start getting to vendors that have a single product, or some vendors have multiple products.
Might see what you like.
Exactly.
Might see what you like, right? It's almost like the college thing, to really translate it. You kind of explore what you like and then hone it in.
Those my exploratory years.
That's how. Yeah. And you did it early. I was always, I don't want to say jealous, but it was always, I think I used to always say that to you. So you just got in this game in your early 20s, right? I was IT for too damn long. Chris, probably the same.
Yeah.
We got into this game a little later. So, That's a nice
Well-
time to do it. Not that our journeys are not bad good. You know, we have our journeys and we love them, but it's cool that you got in early.
And I mean, it worked out, right? Because it
Really
did
good
work in that exploratory method of like, okay, I sold HPE, I sold NetApp, I sold Windows. I learned all about the Windows licensing and how it continuously changed, right? But one of the things that I sold was
Get a
was
PhD
Veeam.
in that.
Yeah, exactly. I minored in
Hmm.
Microsoft Windows licensing.
Yeah, exactly. They used to have a
did. I
cert
had
for
it.
it, so that just goes to show. Yeah. If you have to have a cert in your licensing, there's a problem. But
How many
but no.
cows do you
But
need?
to your point, see,
that was fun.
so you got to look at, hey, Windows licensing's crazy. Veeam's pretty
Yeah,
straightforward.
exactly.
Go that way, yeah.
So I mean,
Yeah.
you know, and the other thing too is Disty. Like I had a lot of friends at Disty that worked at Ingram Micro and things like that. So I mean, that was also kind of eye opening as well.
That's a good
because
point.
they get trained just as well as the resellers, and you know they're
Yeah.
there to help configure and sell to customers and partners.
So
as well.
some of them have professional service arms of them too, so they deliver that service. So yeah, you're right. They have to know just as much about the solution.
Yeah.
if
So
not
30
more.
seconds for any.
We don't
I
talk
was
about
going to say
Disty.
30
Yeah, we don't- I was
seconds
gonna say,
really
yeah.
quick for anybody, because if I was in IT and you said Disty, I'd have no idea. We're talking
Yeah.
about distribution. So as strange as it may seem, when you come into tech sales or engineering on this side, you don't sell directly to customers. You actually go through a reseller that can provide value and help, like Emilee did at her previous role. And then they go through a distribution channel that actually
There's a layer between the manufacturer and the
ships the
reseller.
stuff, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, and I made friends with all these people, so that was probably my biggest piece was like networking. I sold Veeam when I was at CDW, and that was nice. I made a good friend that was over in the Georgia office or the Alpharetta office at the time. His name's Izzy. He now works at
Oh, easy.
So, and he's doing well. So he was actually the inside channel developer, because Veeam was still brand new at the time. I mean, that had to be 2014, I would think, right in the beginning of 2014. So still fairly young company.
Is that when you? Oh, when you
Yeah.
met Izzy.
And that's also that's
Because you started working
no,
at
I
like
started
15.
working at 2014 at Veeam. Yeah.
Was it 14?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
So
Oh,
I
yeah, yeah, yeah.
so
I
we
can
were
see that, okay.
working probably together beginning of the beginning parts of the year, right? And then that's when I was like, okay, like this is licensing is not. I don't need a certificate to go and understand it, right? It's pretty straightforward for me to get this to get this and to sell it to customers, and it's backup. Everybody needs backup. It's a really easy conversation to have
And
with end users.
and at that time, Veeam was really the only one doing
Virtual. Yeah.
what they did with VMware at the part too. So it was hot back
Yeah.
then. Like, yeah. So it was. Now there's a lot of competition space, which arguably when I was even at VMware, we could say brought backup back to the forefront. And now ransomware probably did it better. But anyway, but they were a pretty hot company
Yeah.
back then.
Yeah. So it wasn't until he brought up like, hey, we're opening an office in Arizona. Maybe you might be interested in, focusing on a single product type of solution. And I was at that time, right? Because it's a lot to continue to learn so many different technologies, but then also have to sell those and provide the business value and things like that. So I ended up moving over to Veeam in October of 2014. So I've been here for, it's going to be 9 years coming up. So quite some time.
that's awesome. Congrats.
Yeah. And my best. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to interject real quick. I wanted to point out that we're talking about a lot about one product and focusing, and while that is can be a good thing, I know when I made the transition, I got some feedback. People going, you're going to go to Veeam and have focus on one product. You're going to be so bored. You'll have nothing to do. We make you sell 3,000 different products right now. How could you have fun selling one?
Yeah. Isn't that more fun?
And I just want to, if anyone's reading that as a fear, like one product, I'll be bored. It couldn't be further from the truth, right?
Oh, no.
I think like honestly at Veeam, they've got multiple products now, even Pure we do. While you focus in one kind of, backup and disaster recovery and restoration, there's a lot of pieces to it that you could like you have so much now, nobody can be an expert in all of the things, right?
Well, we
Same with
touch
us.
And there's
so
the
many parts of
ecosystem.
the data center.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to know, right? Like what's going on? What is it doing? How's it talking to this? How are they communicating? So there's
how's it work with storage?
You got VMware certs, you have cloud certs, some storage.
Every application.
there's a lot more to it from a sales perspective.
Like I had to dig into SAP just to understand how to back it up so I could talk about it.
From a sales perspective, it was easy because I only need to know how much this thing is going to cost, right?
How many you want?
Back then, it was a very, very
how many years?
simple questions, right? Set of questions to be able to ask. But
now
you
already downloaded it?
Sockets.
Yeah.
Sockets and maintenance years. What you need. Yeah.
But I mean, that was one of the reasons why so many people, loved Veeam. It was easy, right? It just works. That was our tagline back then.
Yeah, remember that title?
Yeah.
I still have some of those around.
I was gonna say I was.
So what was your first title at Veeam, Emilee?
I was
Excuse me if I missed it.
An inside sales associate. So I wasn't an SC yet. I actually went on to Veeam in a sales position. And it was funny because when I actually joined the company, our office was brand new. I mean, I did my interview when we didn't even have tile ceilings up yet. They were just finishing rolling out the carpet. I think there was a folding chair and a printer just stacked there. And I walked in to interview with the director of HR, and I think he saw the look on my face of is this where the interview is supposed to be? And then he was kind of like, oh.
Some boiler room? What are we doing here?
So then we used somebody's conference room next door. But that was also am I doing the right thing?
He made you carry some boxes in.
They're like,
hey, can you carry this in?
yeah, exactly. I mean, that was kind of the feel to it, right? Because a brand new office. I mean, when I started, it was just, which is funny, it was me and my old sales rep, who I ended up being partners with for 5 years, right? So Callan Flood, who moved from California to go work in the Alpharetta, Georgia office as a ISA, and then he got promoted to an ISR, so then he moved to Arizona to go and open up that office. He was the only person that was in there, and he would just be on calls, and there I am, just okay, let's figure this out. What are we doing today, right?
That's right. That's where you met him. Yeah. Then you had a partnership with him later. That's awesome.
So I think I found out pretty much going into it. Once I kind of got, I would say, my sea legs, right? The first 3 months is kind of a blur when you start any new company. But then come January, it was kind of okay, I understand the job. I get the role. The one thing that I missed was the CDW effect of asking the additional questions, the follow-ups, the, kind of getting more into the technical aspect of it. And I think that's when I was leaning more towards, maybe I should just get into engineering, because I like to ask all these questions, right? I like to figure out, what else are you guys doing? What other issues are you having? Those types of things. So that ended up turning into another conversation where a sales director came and he was listening in on my calls, and he's like, I think we have you in the wrong role and you really should be in the engineering group. So that's really how I kind of ended up in engineering. It was something I knew I wanted to do, and so I was actively pursuing it, but not
showed the curiosity. And it was pretty obvious.
But I wasn't I wasn't I didn't go up to my boss at the time, so this is what I want to do. It was more of I'm just doing it so that way I understand more. And they were like, you know what, we should actually just move you. So I did my inside sales role for about a year and 4 months, and then
because officially you started the end of 2015.
December 2015.
Because I started at Veeam 2016. Yeah.
That's so right. So it was funny because they brought in the director at the time and Jason Acker to go and interview me for the role. And then they were like, all right, like we're gonna hire you as a inside systems engineer.
Wow.
But you're gonna start in January when these new guys come on board, so that we're training guys all together. But then they removed all my access onto Salesforce, and I was like, well, I don't got anything to do for I can't do my original job anymore because that stuff doesn't exist anymore, right? Yeah.
Just go read some stuff.
So that's what
Learn
that pretty much
VMware.
was what it transitioned to. Well, you got 3 weeks, so let's just go ahead and push you right into it, and start studying for your VMware certifications and everything like that. So, I got a nice little crash course in 3 weeks, more inside of the technical side. So
that's awesome. So you went to college to be Jerry Maguire.
Yep.
You kind of fall into tech sales, being a salesperson in tech, and then worked your way into. I mean, we say fall in. Obviously, there's effort and skill that goes along, but I'll simplify it.
The path was
fall into tech sales, and then you kind of moved yourself, or the team did, into the engineering side of sales, right? Which is really what a lot of this whole journey is about. Where I'm going with this is that's very interesting, totally different than our paths. What do you?
And most people we talk to, it's tech, and
something else.
I saw an SE, and I wanted to go be
I
one.
was tech, and then did business opposite you in college, and realized I like the business side of tech. Where I'm going with all this is, Zane kind of brought it up. You showed curiosity. I'm curious what you think it was. What is it in you? I have my own opinions, but the things that you're interested in that made you move towards engineering.
Thanks for not telling her.
I won't say
what her opinion is. That's
I won't tell you out loud.
I got my
in
opinion,
private.
Yeah.
No. All in a good way. But like I said, Zane already said curiosity. You're showing that and doing discovery probably. What other skills?
Well, and I worked with her for
but what other
years,
skills do you have that make you good at this? And I ask that as if someone in IT is listening going, can I be an SE? What are the skills that drove you to become that engineer, right?
Yeah. No, I think for me it was just for one, and I always give this advice to anybody, right? You got to be passionate about what you do, and you have to have the aptitude to learn. Like you need to want to learn, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's what really drove me, was like every time I asked a new question and I didn't know what it meant, it was I mean, it happens to this day, right? Like, asked something 3 hours ago, and I'm like, what does that mean? And I'm like, furiously looking it up and reading all I can to understand better, right? And I think that's what's always driven me is just this need and this want to learn more. And I felt like on the engineering side, I would get that exposure so much more than from a sales piece. Because, I mean, and everybody always laughed too. They're like, you went the wrong way. Like, you're supposed to go an SE and then go into sales so you make more money. You don't go sales and then an SE. And I'm like, but that was to my point.
Early enough.
And
you could always go back. It's not like you couldn't.
But she's obviously passionate, right?
Yeah.
And thank you, Emilee, for that. And hopefully people find that valuable. I was going to say the exact same thing.
Yeah, my other running joke is always, eventually you get tired of making cold calls, and you realize that customers are more willing to pick up the phone if you have an engineering title versus a sales title.
That is true.
Right? So
that is.
That's a good point. I don't know if we made that on here because we have, right? You become more
You're the expert. Yeah.
The trusted advisor than the sales. Now where are we selling? Well, actually, I'd like to look at it different. Like, we have a solution. They have some problems. You ask the questions. That's the difference. Okay, I think this is how we could solve that for you. This is what I got, and I'll help you through it. So it's sales, but it's trusted advisor. Yeah. Whereas the salesperson's like, hey, when are you gonna? So what's the process? Who's the decision maker? Do you have budget? It's all sales, right? I mean,
we really want to help and support and consult, right? And on the side, they end up calling it selling to people, But we're really doing it out of the passion we have. No, Emilee, that was great. And the example I was going to use was we're getting ready to get on this call, and Emilee's there in office trying to simulate a disaster recovery scenario, right? Like she's so into like her craft right now and what she's doing. Like that passion shows.
Yeah. Trying
so
to run
I'm
the
glad you
script
said
and it
that.
never worked until about 30 minutes ago. And now I'm getting all the alerts for it that it's actually working. And now I got to learn how to turn it off. So, but yeah, I mean, that's
awesome.
That was kind of it. And then, you know, I went from an inside systems engineer, and that's where, of course, I met Zane, right? And we sat right next to each other for almost a year and a half.
The same team, and we're working to the same goal.
Probably about one single divider wall between us. And Zane's cube, he used to face towards me. So, like, he would be talking into his computer.
Oh, yeah, because we were in the corners. So I was...
And I had my stuff faced towards him. And then I was like, this is too much. Because I just... At some point, it's like you would just get really hyped up. And you'd be like, I can't hear what I'm saying because I'm listening to what Zane's saying because I don't know what he's talking about over there. And now I'm curious as to like, what'd you say? Like repeat that.
Wait, you said this
repeat
thing.
That? Like, what did they ask?
I think we had those huge headphones too, so I didn't have to hear anything. If I was just like, I was like a helicopter.
Yeah. So then I shifted my stuff to go in the opposite direction, but that still didn't work because now my back kind of faced him and I could still hear him just yelling at me. And then Jason, of course, was over on the other side of Zane, and he directly faced Zane. And Jason's like, 7'5", just, I mean, he stands up and he's 4 feet hanging over your top of the cube, right?
Oh, so, and he would do that to me all the time. He'd come over, hey, Zane, and I'm like, whoa.
He'd pop up.
You gotta warn me, bro. Like,
we would all go like,
Emilee had to climb.
Like, what's going on?
That's true. He could hover across the whole thing.
Yeah. Like whenever Jason had a question, you just hear him hit the pause and then just pop up and just like, hey, Jane. You on the phone? You're just like, oh. Like, you gotta warn people before you do that, man. You just...
I tried to do it to him a couple times, but he'd hear me coming because I had to call him up. But
you could have just pop up. So I mean, that was a fun time.
But those were a good time because we got to hear each other, and then sometimes we'd try to best the other person out.
Yeah, and also you got to learn, right? Because, I mean, you were the Hyper-V guy that had the most extensive knowledge on Hyper-V. So, yeah, we always had a lot of questions.
I was the older, experienced IT guy. The grizzled old IT guy.
Yeah, and we would always be like, hey, Zane, like, how does that work? Hey, Zane, like, what would you do with this customer? Then that was definitely helpful. So thank you, Zane, because I mean that helped me a lot for 2 years, right?
Were you all shooting the old guy with Nerf guns and stuff over the cubicle walls?
Did we?
We would do these balloon.
We had balloons
things too. It was weird. Yeah, we would.
But we were
pop over
always
the thing and you had to keep it off the floor.
Paying attention on calls. Yeah, but this was during break time that we had the balloons, or we had the stress balls that we would just toss over back and forth.
Yeah.
And
sometimes you'd be on calls, that balloon go up, and
you'd be like, "Oh,
you're talking."
Yeah.
Anyway, I think those balloons were left over from Bailey's wedding. We decorated his cubicle once, but no, I appreciate it because it was really cool. I mean, I was learning to be an SE too, but I had been in consulting and in IT forever, but I had the knowledge and I was learning more as well. So it was really cool to see both of you, Bailey, and yourself, like just where you started and then where you grew. And I know you came with background and he did tech sales as well, but that's always been really cool. So every time I've seen you take that next step, you're like, woo, I feel like I was part of that. That's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was really cool to see our team succeed.
Yeah, I mean, because you went to the field probably about 6 months before I did, because you went 2017.
Yep.
Like in July. And then I went into the field January 2018 as a public sector field engineer.
So one of the guys over there would always remind me, if you just stayed, you could have been here forever, but you had to move. I'm like, it's fine. Emilee got it. It's great. It's room for everybody.
Was infected with scorpions, right? So there's that problem. You didn't want to have to deal with that anymore.
Yeah, but that thing sold for a lot more money than I sold it. I'll tell you that. I kind of wish I kept it, but
yeah. But I mean, that was my next my next journey, or that was my next step, right? Was I did the inside SE. job for about 2 years, and you learn a lot from that, because that is, from 8 to 5 back-to-back demos. And then when Zane left for those 6 months, right, it was just me and Jason Bailey, and we were, I think there were some days where him and I didn't even see each other, because we would just be so overbooked with calls that it would just be back to back to back to back to back. But you learn a lot in those back-to-back calls, because not every customer is going to have the same question. Not every scenario is going to be the same. So you're just committing things to memory at that point of, oh yeah, that's how this worked, because this customer yesterday asked about how this came up when they had NetApp, or this customer wanted to know about this with Nimble. So, I mean, yeah, you learned a lot from that perspective. And then when I went to the field, that was fun, because that was just this is where I guess you make asks versus letting people tell you no. So that's my other thing, right? I'm definitely one of those people that will always ask for something versus assuming it's a no. Because the role at the time for the field SC was originally supposed to be hired, I believe, in Colorado. But it was to support 2 reps. One that was going to be the rep in Arizona, and one that is the one in Colorado. And that was Kellen, that was the rep in Arizona. And I was like, look, if you're going to hire somebody in Colorado that has to support somebody in Arizona, why not just hire somebody in Arizona that can support the person in Colorado? And they're like, well,
yeah,
that's a good point. We don't have an answer as to why not.
Okay.
So I guess, can you be at the interview in 2 days, and we're going to make you go through an entire interview process and do a whiteboard. And
nice.
Yeah, that was fun, because then I interviewed with the sales director at the time, the sales rep, the hiring manager, and then our VP of engineers. So that was a fun panel interview for me to get to go through, and I got the job.
Yeah, that's a good point out. That's usually how those hirings go. You kind of go through the gauntlet, if you will, but they want to see that you'll stand up and do a presentation and
whiteboard. And
sometimes you don't have to make it related to the tech. Obviously, they're going to make you related to it because you came from Veeam. Same with me. Actually, mine was, how about you come up to Seattle and we just go to a customer meeting, and we've heard you on the phone, but let's see what you do in the field. Let's see if you show up. Like, all right.
Nice.
And then we're going to whirl around and take you city to city and see if you can stay awake.
It's called the stress
but
test.
that's usually the process. Just
Yeah.
yeah. Shake him up, see what he does.
But no, it was a good experience. I mean, for me, I didn't think I was going to get the job. Here I am, an inside SC of 2 years, that was probably compared to the people that are interviewing, they're probably a little bit more qualified, and I'm making a demand that I don't have to be in Colorado. I'm going to stay in Arizona.
Yeah. And I'm changing the job on you. Yeah.
There's that. So there was.
Hey, that probably worked. You closed them. They're like, oh, okay.
They said the close was. They're like, all right, like the job is supporting Colorado territory, so if you can make it to Colorado in time for this interview, then because like that's the job, right? You never, you should know what your week looks like, right? Like I knew I had to be in Ohio this week to record content, but when you're a field SC, I mean, it depends on who you're working with, right? Your sales rep could be like, I don't plan whenever I wake up in the morning. Like I don't know what's going to happen that day, right?
Yeah. Hey, what are you doing Thursday? Like, why?
Want to go to Vegas? We got a meeting, right? Forgot to tell you about it. And we can either drive or we can fly. So it's a kind of a lot of that stuff that just kind of happens, right? Or you get a really, great opportunity and the customer can't meet because they're requiring a RFP, and these are the only meeting times that they have. So you got to make it work. So that was part of my interview process. Was like, well, how fast can you get here? Can you make it to this interview? Because this is the only interview time slot that we have, and we're not going to make an exception for you to interview at any other time.
That was brilliant.
And I was like, all right.
Yeah.
I booked my flight, got there, did the interview. I was like, I remember every part of that interview the entire time because I was super nervous. And I was sitting next to,
I bet.
one of our, I would say, more outspoken sales leaders at the time. He's great. Him and I are friends now, I would think. But he was just like, this is the job, and what would you do in this situation? How would you handle this? And it's kind of intimidating. And it wasn't until we walked out, they're like, breathe. You did okay. And I'm like, no, this is still part of the interview. I don't care what you say. Like, I'm not until you don't see me.
You're not going to break me.
I'm not saying anything. I'm just going to be like, this is a great experience. Thank you for the opportunity. And, I look forward to hearing from you.
That's funny.
That's right.
Let's
Stay
go.
in character.
Then it wasn't until we were, I think I was sitting, and the director of our inside engineer, so my boss's boss, called me at the time, and he goes, they're going to offer you the job. And I was like, are you messing with me? And he goes, no, they are. I'm just preparing you because that's what's going to happen next. And I was like, are you sure? And he goes, I am not calling you to tell you I think. I'm telling you because I know, and I had to go through the approval of them calling me to let me know. I'm like, oh, okay. And then the hiring manager at the time, of course, he was running late to catch his flight. So him and I jogged together to his flight in the Denver airport for him to tell me that, we're going to start sending you the paperwork, but could you walk fast with me? Because we need to get to the gate, and let me just explain to you how this next process is going to work. And I'm like, okay.
Like, you are so their person. She made it to Denver to get it here. She's jogging down the tarmac with me or whatever,
Well, that's the interesting point. Like, we know you know the tech because you've been here. We've heard you on the phone. This is a whole nother level, right? Because it's fair to say the inside job was, you kind of already said it, and I remember it. It was just your calendar got filled by something, and you just went down, demo. You tried to figure out ahead of time what you were going to talk about. Most of the time, that's not what you got to do. And you almost were doing things on the call. I remember days where I'm not sure if I was repeating myself to this customer or I said this thing 2 hours ago.
Are we still talking about the same infrastructure?
So
VMware, right?
But you just kept rolling with it. You're like, well, I'm going to say it. Yeah. Oh, forgot. Yeah,
you're running not. 3 PAR still? Yeah. Okay. all right. Making sure.
But the outside's a whole other animal. It's these things, right? These situations, this stress of getting there, the stress of performing when you get there, reading a room.
Yeah,
all
that was
those
the number
things.
one thing they told me, right? It's like, Veeam, and that's great. Now you need to learn everything else,
but who
right?
cares?
Because this job isn't, we move out to the field. It's not back-to-back demos. It's meeting with partners, meeting with customers, having conversations, having, one direction conversations where all the customer calls about is, how they're going to move all their data into, a public cloud provider. What's your solution around that? Or, what's their solution around moving all of their workloads off of HP and a Dell or Dell to Cisco? Like what, and sometimes it just doesn't even revolve around what we're selling. It's just, you're the trusted advisor. They want to have conversations with you. So go learn everything else. So my first...
And then over time, hopefully get customer stories. So you can say, well, people normally do this, or I've seen this successful, right? And building that.
And my first few years in the field were great because, that's what I did, right? I partnered up with another field engineer from another storage company. And I was just like, hey, I'm going to go and, sit and do installs with you. And let's go and have lunch and just talk about this stuff. Or I'm going to go work inside of, this partner's office. And that way I could go and learn about everything else that does not revolve around Veeam. And that's
because you're just a little part of the
solution that touches of a bigger, everything.
Everything. Yes.
Yeah, and I was gonna say,
that's why I tell people the hardest part of this job is learning everything else.
Well, and there's even all those, when you first said everything else, I was thinking outside of tech, right? So there's all those other technologies you need to learn.
Sure.
Yeah.
But and you kind of had a different path than I did. And we're already on the sales side, but I was thinking in terms of myself, when I moved to enterprise architect and then ultimately to this side, the sales side, most of what I focused on was soft skills, right? Like I knew technology, and don't get me wrong, I still go learn tech and keep up with tech, but that was the easy part for me, right? It was some of those soft skills and getting in front of people and knowing all those skills. And, being that trusted person and all those things. So.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Soft skills.
Cool. Yeah, I did the field for 4 years, and that worked out great. I did all the different roles, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you were very successful there. You did a bunch of roles and kind of took more of a leadership role, I guess, in the region, maybe you could say. Anyway, what we all kind of did as we got seasoned.
Yeah.
But now you're in a wholly different. I want to make it sound like it's
almost a year now in my new role. But yeah,
Dang.
it's in a different role where it's not the day-to-day customer sales grind, right? It's a little bit more different from the sense of we're still selling, but you're not actually interfacing with each individual cell itself. Because I mean, it's like I'm producing content that 2,000 hundreds of people are possibly going to be seeing.
Yep.
And I might be able to have some one-on-one conversations.
So that those conversations can happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's been great. It's been fun. It's different. It's a different side of the business that you get to kind of see all the inner workings and behind the scenes that you don't usually get to see when you're, a direct seller or systems engineer. I like to say half the time my job as I live in the future, where it's just constant roadmap conversations and updates and what's coming next, and having a relationship with the product managers at the time. So it's very different. I would say for me, my first month, we did our big summit where we bring in all of our Veeam vanguards and our Veeam community, and we get them all together. And then we also brought in all of our product managers, right? The product leaders here at Veeam. And there's a little over 13 of them. And working at Veeam for 8 years, I'm familiar with the names because you see them on the forums, right? And then you send responses, and you get a response back. Seeing the people in real life and putting a face and a name, you're like, oh, they're real. I just seen a name this entire time. I've never actually seen you in person. So that was a kind of a cool moment for me to be able to see. Here's all the product managers, everybody that's been working, all the new updates and things that are to come, and the ones that were probably answering your questions when you would ask a stupid question on the forums, and they'd be like, oh, that's a very bad question. Yeah. You're going to remember you.
Oh, that was you.
You linked the wrong thing onto this question. I know. It's the same question. I accidentally linked the one for Hyper-V when I meant to link the one for VMware.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but it still applies. Just answer the question.
I got a few of those. And I was very specific. Like, I know this is the beta, and I understand this, but I got this error. Is it related? Why don't you just read the requirement? Like, I know. Like, just a yep, that's related. Just wait, and then that'd be great.
No, to your...
Otherwise,
that's a
I found
great
a bug.
point, though. I don't know. I'm glad to hear you say it. I didn't know if I was somewhat unique in that way, but there's something mentally, for me anyway, you meet someone and they've met you, and then you feel a little more connected, or like, I met that person, I can reach out to them.
Yeah.
I remember the same time it happened here at my current company and when I worked at Veeam, and you're like, oh, wow, these are the people, right? So a great point. I was going to turn that around and say, you're probably kind of flipping to that side, whether you know it or recognize it or not. With your new role, there's probably people within the company now going, oh my God, Emilee's here. I've met Emilee. She's doing this.
Good and bad, right? I mean, I had that situation at Beamon with with the CSM who came up to me. He's like, I've always wanted to meet you, and I'm like, why? What's going on? And he's like, I want to talk to you a little bit more about like your story, like your journey, like what'd you do to get to, to do ABC. And I'm like, oh, okay, let's talk about that. But he was very amped up, and it was great because I was like, oh, like, cool. I never had this experience before, right? Because like usually it's the opposite, and I'm just like, oh, there's so and so. Like I go talk to him. Like You know, or maybe I'm a little too afraid to talk to him because I don't want him to remember me. Because then what if I said something stupid and then they're gonna be like, oh yeah, that was that chick that said something really dumb, and we don't want to talk to her. But yeah, no. So I mean, so yeah, that's cool. But then it's also the opposite thing of like, you know, I've been here for so long, and then I've worked with a lot of people on the West Coast, so nobody's afraid to go and ask me those questions, right? People just ping me all the time, just like, hey, do you know if this is coming? Can you make that request? Can you do this for this customer? Can you jump on the call? Right? Just avoid any other protocol of like sending an email, getting a list of people, like let's do this, like formal. No. We know you. You know us. We've been hanging out. Like you just tell me what's going on. Like give me this.
Yeah.
To your point, good for this customer.
I to your point, could be good and bad sides, right? I think that's great that people feel that comfortability to reach out to you, because some of us have been on the other side, or sometimes still face that, where you're like, hey, teams, I'm a resource here for you, right? These are the things I can do for you. Go ahead and reach out to me. Doesn't seem like you have that problem at all. So.
Yeah, no. I stay pretty busy. We'll say that.
Yeah. I can remember, so that happened internally. I can remember the first time it happened externally where it threw me kind of off guard was last year at VeeamON in Vegas. I had like 3 different people that weren't coworkers come up and say, hey, been watching your webinars or your videos, and I wanted to talk to you about, you know, Veeam and Pure or whatever it was, because I thought this was really great. And I'm like, what did I record? Right? Where did you see it? Where did you see this? I mean, we're really cool. Obviously, put out some good content, and you're like, okay, that's cool feedback, but it's strange.
No, that is always the strange one.
Yeah, I had a partner do this here. Like, oh, I knew you were going to be there. That's why I put these questions of what we wanted to know, because I watched all these things, and I'm like, oh, that's people have seen the things. Great.
That's not
a waste of time. Yeah. I'm not just doing it for myself.
Go into a black hole. I mean, I get those too, right? From like new reps that I haven't met with, or new SEs. They're like, oh yeah, I saw your video on this, and I'm like, where's that located, by the way? Can you send that to me? Because I forgot I recorded that. So yeah, let me go back and look at that thing.
What did I say? Is it right?
Yeah, it always reminds me of the old school movie where he's just like, I blacked out. What happened?
Yeah. He just says all the smart things.
Like, what happened? Blacked out. That is part of it as well. So.
I mean, you've had a great journey. It's awesome how
curiosity, passion, right? These are kind of the things that I was going to make this point. I don't know that and you don't have to tell me if you want this recent role. You also probably didn't say, hey, I want that role, right? But you kind of were recognized.
I didn't know this role
almost
existed,
very much
to
like
be honest.
Right. Let's be honest. This was kind of. Well, it's probably fair to say that org had an idea of changing it, and it wasn't necessarily, and you got naturally kind of put there because of your efforts, and just not unlike your move from sales to the SE role is what I'm trying to say. That kind of helped you along your careers. Is being, who you were and showing that to them.
You want to know what I think what's really cool for me whenever I reflect on my career here is just I've had some really, really great like leaders, right? Ones that have recognized like, hey, like she could be doing this or she should be doing this. And for some of them, they were just like, we're not even going to bother to ask her. We're just going to go and, put her there, right? That happened to me for the ISC job. The thing was, hey, these 2 SE leaders are in town doing interviews. We think you should go in and interview with them. And I was like, all right, well, I'll just go talk to them. And then it was no, this is an actual interview, and we just hired you for the job. And I was like, oh, okay. So there's how that one happened, right?
What happened?
I didn't think that when I went in that day I was applying for a job, but apparently I did.
Or you always were. You've been doing it for a year. Yeah,
and then the other cool thing or moment at VeeamON is I was talking to somebody that used to work for Veeam that now is at I guess they're not a managed service provider, but they're more on the professional services side now, right? And he's like, oh, it was cool to see you up there on the main stage. It's kind of surreal. And I was like, yeah, it's different, right? I didn't picture myself doing that. He goes, well, just remembered when, our VP said that they wanted to have you do a panel, or be part of a panel style interview for sales kickoff, back in 2018 or 2017, whatever it was. And they were like, we want her to be on that panel. She'd do a really good job at it. And I'm like, oh, really? And he goes, yeah. And I was like, so that's how I was chosen to do that? Like it was him that suggested, like, we want to pull, like, wow, we want her up there. And he goes, yeah. Like, and he's like, man, he's like, to think, like, from that day, 2019, that we said, like, oh, we should put Emilee on that, panel for sales kickoff to now you're doing, product demos and presentations for thousands of people. He's like, it's surreal to see that, that's, your journey, and you come a long way. And I'm like, should have seen me 4 years before that, right?
Yeah.
Should have seen me when I wanted to be.
It was the same for me when I went to Veeam. Right. It's real weird. This is not what Jerry Maguire does. He doesn't go on stage.
So I mean, there's.
No, it's the same for me to be surreal from the person that sat next to me in a cubicle to, because I mean, I knew what we were doing. We went to VeeamON, and there you were, on the big stage.
And how I ended up in this role, not falling into roles and things like that. It was just, hey, we need someone to present at VeeamON. This was last year. Would you want to do it? I'm like, yeah, sure. They're like, well, dude, sure. Like, are you okay? Are you nervous with them? Yeah. I can't see anything behind the first two rows, so.
That's another good trait, right? You're like, hey, are you willing to do? You're like, yes. And in your head, you're like, I have no idea how I'm going to pull this off. I don't even really know where to start.
Don't know what I said yes to, but I'll figure it out, right?
Yeah. But I'm going to be terrified maybe. I'm going to rise to the occasion as best I can. And you know what? I'm going to come out the other side better. That's how you grow.
It's funny because presenting in front of groups of people has never really, bothered me. It's more so presenting by myself. Like, being in studio and I'm just recording stuff and, I have a guy, but he's behind a window on this side. I can't see him. I can't see his facial expressions. I like talking to people, and I like being able to see that people are responding and that they're understanding, they're nodding their head, right? That's what I like. And so doing that for, one person or a group of thousands, as long as I could see somebody in the front row, I'm like, okay, you understand it? Cool. All right, let's move on.
That's always been my trick, even back when I taught. Is like, I'm just gonna make eye contact with one of you, and I'm gonna say, right? And if I know your name, I make that joke now. Like, I don't know anybody's name in here, but I'll try to figure out, hey, anybody do this? Great. I'm gonna ask you how was that experience? You're part of this.
Yeah, so sorry to all the executive leaders that were there at VeeamON that were in the front row that I kept staring at, like, you understand? Yeah, okay. I can't see behind you in this row, so you're who I'm looking at this point, and we're just gonna keep on carrying on this conversation.
So, tip for anybody that comes and sees you live:
sit in the front row.
Sit in the front row.
Just nod.
You're probably gonna be.
I will probably be talking to you,
or
I may call you out. There is that chance too. I've been known to go on small rants and say, "Hey, doesn't that sound great?" So, and that's just something that, that's just something that comes in the field too, right? When you're a field engineer and you're having conversations with large audiences, and if you can make a call out, if you can reference, if you can do a good story tell, that resonates with people and they remember it, right? So,
yep. We're telling story. I hate to say it sounds bad. We say we're telling stories, but we're putting. I mean, that's just how communication works. We're putting it into a context. So you could remember the pieces, right? Yeah.
Hopefully they're true stories.
Tell a story.
Yeah.
It's true story. Yeah. It's just like we're spinning a yarn up here, but
I'm not improv when I walk up there.
Secret be told. Secret be told. We always said you can borrow stories. So sometimes you're like, oh, I had a customer once, and maybe you didn't, but the story was real. The relatability was real. But it might have happened to somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, my favorite was
But the story part is the best
I
part.
always made fun of my old
Yep.
boss because he always had the same story, but he'd always change out the storage. Well, when I used to
Oh,
be
yeah.
a storage architect and I ran NetApp, well,
And he was a
when
manager
I
too, by the
used to
way.
be a storage manager and I ran Pure, and I'm like, dude, you have a lot of different storage arrays, and he's like, oh, so it's all the same. Like I just swap out the name every time. I'm like,
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah. That's the
Yeah.
only untrue part of this. He did run Pure, though. I do know that. We'll give him that one.
I'll cut him that.
We'll give him that one. He's told that story. He was a manager at that point. Anyway, we should get him on here. We're not going to say his name. We won't say his name, but we should get him on here. We should get Ackert on here, too. Anyway, that's... well, we know you're a very busy person. I think we've kept you even longer than you wanted to be here. So I think we could do this forever.
It's
There's
fun.
a lot of great nuggets in there. Maybe we'll get you back
we can do
someday.
part 2
We can
series.
I don't know. CTO title. Part 2 series. I like that. Maybe in context of something, after a show or something.
Behind the scenes.
Behind the scenes. What's it like in the day of the life?
I'm just gonna attach
we're gonna branch this out.
when I go on stage, and like it's backstage.
There you go.
There you go.
You can see
Time
all
series.
the things that are happening. Yeah. Stepping over the wires.
It's like a little
Yeah.
a little documentary. It's almost like following Taylor Swift or something. But no, I really appreciate it. It's great. Again, been known you forever. Started our SE careers at the same time, though coming from different veins. So
That's cool.
it's always great to talk about it. So we usually ask at the end. Maybe I'll ask it a little different for you, and I think I kind of told you ahead of time. We usually it kind of originated from one of our original shows where we asked maybe your biggest mess up you learned from, or maybe the biggest thing in your career. And I know a lot of that's probably already called out. What a lot of guests are now kind of saying is like, what's the one thing to remember, that helped you get into this career that, that those listeners out there might help them in their journey. You could tell it in a story. I don't know. I'm kind of giving you an out. Not a lot of people want to tell us their mistakes. The IT guys like to talk about mistakes. You come from a different background, so I'm trying to phrase it a little
I
different.
mean, I don't want to talk about the mistakes.
Well, and our point here is it's a learning journey. You'll learn from things,
mistakes. That's funny.
and you learn from other people. So, all right. Well, what's the one thing that stands out in your career that everybody should kind of think about, that they should put into their actions, or be a trait that they should exhibit if they want to be successul in the SE
Well,
field?
I think
about that?
we kind of mentioned it earlier, was the whole curiosity and the continuing to learn,
Okay.
right? Doesn't just stop. No one's really an expert in anything. There's always much that you can learn, and that you can learn from your peers. I think I'm one of those that also, it's funny, I had to do a test on this where they showed what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, and one of my strengths and weaknesses is searching for feedback, right? And critique, and asking people like, hey, what do you think about that? What do you think I should change? What do you think I should do for this, right? And I spend a lot of time doing that, but it's something that really helps me. And I think, if a lot of people continue to do that, like, it's only going to help you grow, right? And get better at what you do, and kind of hone your craft. So,
That's perfect. That's perfect. So it's like you are asking, what did I not do right, or what could I do better? And being able to internalize that and not take offense to it. Be like, okay,
It's
cool,
amazing. I just had a discussion earlier today about actionable feedback. But ask it in a way that it can be actionable, not just, did you think that was good or bad?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you were good. But
you think that
asking
joke was
for
funny?
It'll be Eeyore.
actionable feedback.
land right?
Yeah.
Should I
So that's a
write
great
something else?
one. That's a great one.
Yeah, because I've taken that, maybe very similar in that. Maybe I'd never really realized that. But the way you ask it is like, oh, you did great. Why are you? I'm not. I mean, I could do better. I'm thinking these parts.
Yeah.
Just give me feedback. I think the day you can listen to your own recording and actually critique it is a big,
man, I do that all the time.
big step. At least it was for me. Once you could do that, the first time I did it, I'm like, that wasn't so bad. I could say this differently. I could do this better. And it's super helpful. it's really hard to take that step. I think it was for me because I didn't want to listen to half. of
I
that
go
stuff.
into a spiral when I have to listen to myself because I'm like, where was I going with that? What was I saying? Yeah.
But it's good, right?
I mean, they have to kick me
Yeah.
out of the studio because they're just like, all right, like you're just gonna want to keep on redoing this. Yep, I will. I'll be like,
Yeah,
let's
that's
roll
tough.
it back to do it again.
Oh, sorry, Emily.
Yeah.
We ran out of
We are running
tape.
out.
What do you mean tape? Like
Yeah,
no more
literally,
space.
He's like, okay, I'm gonna stop recording because the file's getting way too large, and we've got to save space. And I'm like, well, I'll let you know when I feel like I'm ready for it. But yeah, I mean,
You get a quota.
Yeah.
You get 50 terabytes, Emily.
Probably
Make
why they're
it
just like,
work.
yeah, we gotta
That's
figure
funny.
out something for her because she'll spend all day in here. And, yep, yeah, I will. And then I'll see it and I'll be like, I made a really weird face. I want to try that again. They're like, no,
Yeah.
no, you're not. You're not doing that again because you think you made a weird face. You're continuing. You're done.
Yeah, that's tough.
They're like, we thought that was the best part of the video, Emily. This is
Yeah.
great. We're gonna ship it.
You're
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
You think they just don't record it sometimes? Like, yeah, sure, go ahead.
I think
while
one
they're
point
just
today he was
mastering
like,
it.
I just stopped recording because you looked like you were doing something, and I was like, yeah, I was messing around. I was trying to fix something in my lab. It broke mid demo because I did something stupid. Yeah, live demos. Did something I probably shouldn't have done.
There you go. You just
Yeah. Which
Just
it
answered
was,
the other part of the question.
That was my other part of the question, right? I was trying to cancel a fail back operation in the middle of a fail over operation, and I did it all completely wrong. And yeah, it cost me about 15 minutes of valuable recording time because I had to make them stop it, and I had to go back and I had to fix everything that I broke in the lab and get it all cleaned up, and then we can start the recording process again.
start over.
I had a similar situation in the Alpharetta office when I was still at Veeam like that. We were doing that Azure stuff. And at some point I was like, all right, we're just moving forward.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I'm like, I can't.
It was all rolling their eyes. Plus I had, they were
Well,
rolling their eyes at me.
Thank you, Emily.
I was like,
sorry, I know. Yeah,
that was
that was
perfect.
I think
that
was a
was
great one.
Point. That's perfect.
We could
That's
easily
exactly
keep
right.
talking.
Or exactly
We
the
all
thing we're
like to
asking.
talk, and we could keep going. There's such great stuff here. I really appreciate you taking the time. It's fun to hear your journey. Curious if you want to let people know where to find you out there, or if you'd rather stay more
We can do the
stay
show
more
notes later,
anonymous.
too.
If you want to say how to find you, you're welcome to.
I have a LinkedIn profile and a Twitter profile, and that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Or you
Or
can
on
just see me
Veeam.com
on our
probably,
YouTube
right?
channel.
Like find you
Yeah,
all
you
over
can see
there.
all the videos on
Yeah.
YouTube or
Or Veeam
Veeam.com.
Okay.
Veemon, yeah, all of those things. But yeah, if you want,
Buy a
if
ticket
you
to
have
Veemon.
Yes.
questions about my journey, you can reach out. Just message me on LinkedIn. That would probably be the easiest way.
There you go.
And go catch her on stage at Veemon. That'd be a good time.
Yeah,
See how it goes.
Sit in the
Yeah.
front row.
yeah.
Well, again, thank you so much, Emily. Zane, thank you as always. It's always fun. And to anybody out there still listening, thank you. Hope you're finding this valuable, and can't wait to catch you next time.
Guys.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.